Good morning, everyone. I'm Pamela Almonte, and I would like to start off with a simple question. Has anyone here ever seen the movie An American Tale? Okay, only like a few hands. All right. Well, if you haven't, I'll give you a brief context. 37 years ago, this movie was released. Fivo Mouskowitz, a mouse who escaped the dangers of cats from Russia, along with his family, came to the promised land, the United States, in hopes of living the American dream. If you have seen the movie, you would be familiar with the saying, "There are no cats in America, and the streets are paved with cheese," or "There are no cats in America, so set your mind at ease." What they weren't aware of was all the difficulties and hardships that they would face. Everyone has at least heard of the term, the American dream, at least once in their life, whether that be at home, school, communities, etc. This concept has been occurring since the early 1600s, but first became a term in 1931 when the book Epic America by James Truslow Adams was released. He defined it as that dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. Over time, different definitions have been created. While many people have different definitions and views, the overall clear image is equal opportunity to everyone, regardless of your current social or economic status. It offers freedom to many different aspects of your life, like wealth, achievement, decision, and value. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, it is defined as the ideal that every citizen of the United States will achieve success through prosperity and hard work, determination, and initiative. It's hard for these two definitions to go hand in hand, since one speaks of opportunity to everyone, while the other is only ideal to citizens. This raises the question of, is the American dream truly accurate and is it attainable? The American dream has been a powerful concept that has inspired generations of people to seek a better life here in the United States. However, for immigrants, the reality of accomplishing or pursuing this dream is much more complicated than they have been led to believe. Whether we believe it or not, all of these people come to America in hopes of a better life and future, starting from the time of Columbus, in which he took Native Americans forcefully, to the many acts that were passed, to laws that don't allow immigrants to enter America. Although the American dream wasn't a thing until 1931, if you look at the history, there are many events that have impacted this term in today's society when it comes to immigration. Immigrants living in America face many difficulties daily, whether it be language barriers, cultural adjustment, or finding employment. About 3/4 of undocumented immigrants fill in the jobs that U.S. citizens don't want. There are many struggles that come along with the move of a better future. The underlying causes of the false narrative and portrayal of the American dream are diverse. To start, one of the main issues that America faces is the economy and inflation. According to research done in April of 2023, Americans' views of current economic conditions continue to be largely negative, while their outlook for the future continue to worsen. The rising prices for food and housing, unfair economic system, and dissatisfaction of the nation are all things that have affected these views. Secondly, the lack of access to equitable opportunities and limited resources feed into a system of inequality which affects the immigrant and even citizen lifestyle. This makes the path to success for many immigrants and citizens harder, as they are faced with educational and social barriers. In addition, discrimination and systematic racism prevents them from reaching full potential and achieving their success. Lastly, the media, politics, and advertisement are all things that influence society into picturing this fake picture of the American dream. According to research, 68% of people in America use social media. The media and politics go hand in hand, as both have the power to consume and influence us. This all being said brings a situation of whether or not the American dream is truly accurate and attainable. While yes, some people succeed in achieving their own success in the United States, we can't ignore the fact that most face challenges that make it harder for them to fully reach their dream. On the other hand, those who have ultimately reached their goal can argue that opportunities exist for those who work hard, regardless of their origin or conditions. However, the reality for many goes against that claim. Because of this, the false narrative and portrayal of the American dream is reflected between the ideal of the definition and the reality experienced day by day by those seeking a better life in the United States. The economy in America has had a lot of inconsistent peaks and valleys. As of right now, many would say the economy is not doing the best. It all goes way back to the ages of the Great Depression. In 1929, when 60 million shares of stock were quickly sold by panicking investors who had lost faith in the American economy. Due to all of the challenges that were being faced with finding and keeping jobs, Along with steady income, the economy was at its lowest. According to the Franklin D. Roosevelt Museum, it was the worst economic disaster in American history. All this being said, let's take a look at the economy now. The average person in America has a salary between $40,000 and $60,000 a year. Let's say a single person living in New York, working full-time, makes $50K a year. I say New York as it is one of the top 3 states with the most immigrant shares. Do you think this is enough for that person to live comfortably? Well, let's dive deeper. If you were to look up the average price for an apartment in New York City, the prices range from $3,000 to $4,000 a month. In rent alone, you would be living paycheck to paycheck. This is achievable for a person who maybe has a high-paying, steady income and a good education. Realistically, for immigrants who don't come here with as many opportunities and advantages as other people, this is a hard lifestyle to attain. Inflation is another factor that is killing the American dream. According to research, the current US inflation rate is 3.48%. Because of this, many areas have been affected, such as housing, education, healthcare, consumer goods, etc. Throughout the years, inflation has caused an increase in the cost of living, which has created an economic instability. Although it is overlooked, this has a significant impact on the American dream. An increase of 7.7% in prices is not something that makes people hopeful. As prices rise, it is difficult for people to even afford the American dream. One of the main problems for economic situations are unlimited wants but scarcity of resources. Many immigrants are forced to accept low-paying jobs due to their migratory status, which can limit their economic and social mobility in a country that promises equal opportunities. The lack of basic services like healthcare and education create structural inequality. Systematic discrimination and prejudice play an important role in the false narrative of the American dream. According to the Library of Congress, many immigrants who come to the US are often stereotyped and discriminated against. These inequalities make day-to-day living difficult. The reality of the immigrant lifestyle is that in most cases, there is a lack of opportunity and advantages. Even with American citizens, there are barriers like race, gender, or socioeconomic status that can play a role in one's success. The main cause of this negative stereotype and biases, which support the false portrayal of the American dream, the way I see it, the immigrant and even citizen lifestyle can become a cycle when it comes to inequality. For example, let's say we have a low-income family. Because of financial issues, they do not have access to a higher education. Because they don't have higher education, they are overlooked at higher-paying jobs. Unfortunately, this is a reality that many people are stuck in and face. As a daughter of immigrant parents, I have witnessed the way inequality impacted their lifestyle here in America. While yes, they came here in hopes for a better future, and in a way achieved it, there were obstacles like this one that got in the way. Coming from nothing, they struggled to maintain a steady income because of biases. Luckily, they were able to, over the years, work hard enough to gain a higher status, but till this day, they still struggle. Systematic inequalities has impacted the portrayal of the American dream by creating barriers and preventing equal opportunities to all. This reinforces the false portrayal of it by demonstrating that no, opportunity is not equal to everyone. During a rally in Durham, New Hampshire, former President Donald Trump claimed that the American dream is dead. While I'm not one to feed into politics, I agree with that statement. Unfortunately, politics has a big take on how the American dream is viewed and presented. In an article written by the New York Times, Juan Cisomani, a Republican who washed cars in order to help his Mexican immigrant father pay the bills, stated that to him, the American dream has become something not so much to aspire, but to defend from attack. For years, politicians have used the American dream to describe a promise of economic opportunity and prosperity through hard work. Political figures from both parties have used this to promote their own policies and biographies. While these people of higher power have tried to show and keep the promises of opportunity, we need to be realistic of what coming to America really is. The media and advertisement plays another crucial role when it comes to the portrayal of the American dream. How many of you are on social media? That's a lot of you. Have you ever been influenced or swayed by something you saw or heard on it? Just one person? Okay. The things we see on it can affect our beliefs, values, and aspirations. The American dream is something that has been shown to promote a certain lifestyle based on things like material wealth. For example, many TV shows and movies portray such extravagant lives with big homes, fancy cars, brand clothing, etc. I myself can admit that seeing this sort of stuff, whether that be on film or on social media, has affected the way I view success. If this affects our mindset, imagine the people who don't recognize the reality of it. For example, I have many family members who wish they could come to the United States and hope for a better future. I was sitting one day with my uncle, who had recently entered America, and I had asked him if he liked living here so far. He replied with yes, he did, but that he didn't know it was going to be this hard. I was confused for a second, but then I asked him what he meant. He responded with, I thought living here would have been easy since I thought everyone lived so lavish. I wasn't aware that I was going to have to work so much in order to make the living I want. I then explained to him the same thing I am sharing today, that while the American dream can be attainable to some, it's not always the case. It is portrayed as something unrealistic. We have to be aware that not only politics, but the media and advertisement can influence any perceptions of what it means to live up to the success of the dream. While yes, everyone has different views on success, and there are people out there who say they have achieved the dream, we can't forget about the fact that opportunity is not equally accessible to everyone. Unfortunately, things like socioeconomic status, race, immigration status, and systematic barriers impact the ability for someone to fulfill their dreams. I'm not saying that the American dream is completely unattainable. I am saying that it has its challenges, and in some cases, the reality of achieving it is underlooked. Although many can argue that the American dream is accurate as it demonstrates opportunities and possibilities, that's not the case for everyone. I would like to finish off by saying once again that the American dream is falsely portrayed. As mentioned before, yes, everyone has different versions of success, and congratulations to those who have attained it, but I'm pushing for more realistic standards. My goal is to make it known that America is not all sunshine and rainbows. There are challenges we will face and bridges we will have to cross in order to attain whatever type of success we're aiming for. I believe that there is a way we can make this happen. The false portrayal of the American dream can have unintended consequences of dividing people living in the United States. But if immigrants and citizens can come together by promoting an accurate portrayal of this dream, it will help set realistic expectations for attaining that success, along with removing the desire to blame others for falling short. For example, if immigrants share their stories of how they overcame barriers mentioned, people from the outside who have the same aspirations will be aware of this reality. As people, we are called to be united. If we look at the dollar bill, we will see one nation under God. I believe that we should live up to that statement. Instead of having a division, let's be one nation under God. Malachi 2:10 says, are we not all children of the same Father? Are we not all created by the same God? The answer is yes. If we are all created equal, why create a division amongst each other? Unfortunately, we live in a world where this isn't shown. When it comes to the false portrayal of the American dream and what it truly is, it's hard to envision equality. I believe that if we live in a life of truth, honesty, humbleness, and care, we can be hopeful for a better future, not only for us, but for each other. Thank you.
That was really well done, thank you. I do have a couple questions here for you. How do you feel about adult education would affect the society and understanding the changes that are going through our society?
Could you expand on that question?
So we are educated at a young age. We go through what you're going through now. We have these experiences, and then we're thrust out upon the world to learn on our own. And as changes in our society happen, we might not necessarily be educated on what's actually happening. So, if we hypothetically put in a school system that you had to go to again in your 30s, how do you think that would apply to maybe, relearn different languages and stuff? So I haven't spoken Spanish or French since I was, 18. So, being able to do that today.
Like, are you asking, if, other people from other countries came to America, how would they accustomed to that?
More for the people that have been living here for the last, 200 years, and then as society has changed.
Well, I will say that we already do live in a society where education is advancing. I mean, we start off kindergarten, we graduate 12th grade. You decide if you want to go to college, depending what career, that is also a lot of more time. So I guess to answer that question, I would say we just have to accommodate to it. There's nothing that we can really do about that issue. Education will always be a thing. Unfortunately, like, I guess the time is something that we could solve, but like as a society, there's nothing we can do to change that education.
And you spoke a lot about the aspirations and like a measure of success. What would your definition be for the measure of success?
As I mentioned in the speech, everybody has different versions of success. For me, I can speak for myself. The way I see success is me graduating, going to college, graduating from college, living comfortably, having a degree, a family. That's my version of success. For somebody else, maybe success could be being happy, whether that be living comfortably or not. So I really just think it depends on the person, how they view it.
Thank you.
Well done, Pamela. I appreciate the American Tail reference as well. Throwback to my childhood. Always good. You mentioned, Donald Trump quoted it, but you agreed that the American dream is dead. And so the first question I have is, can and should the American dream be brought back to life? And so if the answer is yes, then how can it be done? And if the answer is no, then why not?
Well, I knew I was gonna get asked that. When I said I agree with the statement, I meant solely the statement, not the context in which he was using it as. He was using it as the American dream is dead because there is a lot of immigrants and people coming and stuff like that. I don't agree with that. I think right now, I think America isn't like, I'm arguing that the portrayal of the American dream is like false and that's kind of dead. But I do think that it can be portrayed, like I'm arguing that it can be portrayed in a way where it's living. And as I stated, I think a way to do that is if everybody just came together and instead of having this division of, well, I'm a citizen, I was born here, you figure it out. I think policies can change. I think, like views can change. So I do think there are ways that we can come together as people.
Thank you. So piggybacking off of that, I know of some resources available in our city, right, to help particularly immigrants coming in. What are some things or some resources that you would say are not available and need to be made available, particularly in our context right here in York, to immigrants coming in to give them the opportunity to have equal opportunities?
Like helping them find steady jobs. One of the main struggle that immigrants have when coming here is they're just here, but how are they gonna make an income? I think getting them jobs. My mom actually helps immigrant people and I've seen her like offer like renting houses, like providing like, I guess, refuge for them, jobs, just like the basic needs at first. Once obviously they start getting like paychecks, all right, like kind of like figure out what you're gonna do with it. But I do think we can help them with the basics at first.
And then my final question is, I know you mentioned a lot about some of the factors that make it challenging. One thing I did not hear you talk about was the role of the church. And so I'm curious, what is the role, or does the church have a role in caring for immigrants?
Like I said, we're called to love and care for one another, no matter what conditions we are in. Jesus hung out with many different people that we as human nature, quote unquote, judge, but he didn't judge them, he loved them. So I think we can do the same. If you stumble upon someone who maybe you don't agree with them being here, I still think as Christians, we should love and care for them. When it comes to the church, like my church, for example, there's a lot of like immigrants there, and I'll admit, illegal people there. And I guess instead of pushing them away, we try to help them in a sense, like find jobs, and as I mentioned, find jobs and housing. I think that should be everyone's role as people here.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. That was well done. My question for you is, when pursuing the American dream, what obstacles exist today for immigrants that possibly didn't exist decades or centuries ago?
So like what obstacles are now that didn't exist?
Yeah, yes.
I would say there's a lot of actually like similar obstacles. If anything, I think back then it was definitely a lot worse than it is now. We were actually reading a book in history, The Jungle, and it was like bad, like really bad. So I think when it comes to like the immigrant like experience, it has gotten better. There are still obstacles like not as many opportunities and advantages, but I guess like an obstacle that wasn't back then and it is now. I think it is harder now to even step foot into the country as it was back then. That's probably like one of the main things. But when it comes to like once they're in, I think definitely back then it was worse than now.
And my other question is, and maybe you have said this a minute ago, in your opinion, is the American dream more attainable now than it was centuries ago?
Yes, I do think it is more attainable now. It's still hard. Like, I'm not saying that it's dead. Like, again, I'm just saying there are challenges you will have to face. I do think it is attainable. And again, like, everyone different views different versions of success. But there will be things you will have to, like, go through. It's not just going to be handed to you.
And one last question. Okay. How have immigrants shaped American culture?
That's a good question. I think, for one, it's probably gonna sound bad, I think they provide a lot of diversity, like when it comes to America. Again, they do, I'm just being real, they do take up a lot of like, I guess, construction work that US citizens don't really want. If you go to different like states, like maybe Texas or something, there's a lot of like immigrants working there doing things that other people don't want. So I do think in a sense they do help our country, and I think they should be welcomed here.